I get mad of Shabbos
Welcome back, my dear friends, to another beautiful, wonderful Around the Shabbos Table episode. We're getting a little more true to the name as our table turns round, and it's now around the Shabbos table. And if you haven't listened yet to the last episode with Lori Friedman, that one was stopped only because we were almost about around the Shabbos table. We had recorded on Friday afternoon, and we were getting close.
And that line that you always say at the beginning, which is, the Shabbos wasn't desecrated, could have been not true.
Exactly. So to keep it true, we did not do that. So again, welcome back to Around the Shabbos Table. And Shabbos was not desecrated in any way, shape, or form to create this show. And we are a project of the Intentional Jew Podcast Network. You can check it out at intentionaljew.com. And I have some really great episodes going up for Beyond the Book podcast. I'm going to interview Rabbi and Rebbitzin Roy Neuberger. You'll find out more about them, and they're just really interesting, great people. So I'm going to interview them and a few other authors. So for everything Jewish books, you can go and check out Beyond the Book on intentionaljew.com.
So just like the Shabbos table is pretty random, and depending on the parsha, depending on the yontif, depending upon the thing that's going on, so it inspires conversation. So I think we're living in a time now, after Pesach, Yom HaShoah, coming to Yom Ha'atzmaut, that there's talk in the air. The issues are raised. Issues of Yom HaShoah and our relationship to Yom HaShoah, issues to and of the whole,
greater than just Yom HaShoah. I will stop there for a second. Just our relationship with the Holocaust, with the day of Yom HaShoah, our relationship with those who instituted the day of Yom HaShoah, and it's with tragedy, our relationship with tragedy in general. Having a separate day for tragedy as opposed to the regular or further back, established days that represent tragedy. So Yom HaShoah brings up those concepts at our Shabbos table.
Right. And what it does for us, I think I discuss it every single year, but I think what it does for me is that it helps me maintain my belief system, and also to fine tune it, and to deal with questions and to deal with challenges on it, and then to be able to clarify them, sometimes to tone things down, and sometimes to hone things and fine tune them.
I would have a hard time if one would just totally, as they say in Yiddish, as machavek, and make the day as if a non-day. I challenge that a little bit, because although the day doesn't, these days, whether you celebrate or do not, there's something going on that day, and there's a feeling, there's a thought, really around all of the Jewish world, and it needs to be dealt with. Either, I don't care how you deal with it, but just to pretend that it doesn't exist is hurtful to me.
Right. So I'm not sure that I'm on that extreme, but I nevertheless feel that it's a good thing to bring up these issues and to use this time, because this is what's happening out there in the world, and to use this time to reconnect yourself to Eretz Yisroel, to reconnect yourself to these issues. And again, it doesn't make a difference how you reconnect yourself, where you land on the spectrum, but that it has to be something that you deal with. Look, even if you fell in the place of saying that we reject the concept of a state, and we have no relationship with the state, and we separate ourselves from it, it's fine. In as much as I'm not accepting the ideology, but I'm just saying it's good that you're grappling with something and thinking about something and taking recognizing a position on something, especially if it's a Torah position. Then it has validity. It might not be the way that we think or live, but it nevertheless has validity. And, I once gave a drasha about, and I'll tell you a little bit of the details of it. I gave a drasha about, it was the year that Gore and Lieberman were waiting for the psak halacha as to whether they were going to win or not. They were recounting Florida. It was about 11 days. And it happened to be that in there was Rachel Imenu's yahrzeit. And it was also the time where there was Intifada and there was no one at Kever Rachel that year. In America, there was a tremendous sense of, look at all the people that are going to be, the Jews that are going to be on Capitol Hill. We might even have a Jew in the White House. People were licking their chops. They were so excited about it. And it had a very profound effect on me that we're going through this in the beginnings of this intifada. There is nobody at Kever Rachel. Kever Rachel is, remember v'shavu banim ligvulam. She's the promise. She's the hope. Whenever you go to Kever Rachel, to Mama Rachel, you're standing there in a place where the hope rings out from her kever. That you don't have mini kali, mini bechi. Stop crying, right? You don't have to cry. Wipe away your tears because there's shavu banim ligvulam. Nobody was there at the yahrzeit. And in America, everybody's sitting around going, we're the luckiest people in the world.
Right, look what we have, right?
Look at what we've got. Look what's happening. Look what's happening. It's like amazing to us. And I'm looking at it and I'm saying, Kodesh Baruch Hu saying to Rachel, then cry, Mama Rachel, because they're not coming home so fast. And it was like the whole thing was so devastating. I mean, I gave this as a drasha. And somebody after the drasha came to me and wiped the floor with me. Said to me, how can you interpret it that way? How do you know that that's what God is saying? How do you know that this is what this means? And it really is an amazing thing that, yes, we're in Gullus, but look at what we're doing. And the person smashed me to pieces. So I looked at the person, I said, you're right. I'm wrong. But what's your take on it? Because don't tell me that there's no significance to the fact that nobody, tens of thousands of people on Mama Rachel's yahrzeit are sitting in Kever Rachel, and there isn't a person there. Don't tell me that ain't significant while they're trying to figure out whether Yid's going to make it to the White House, which could be the worst thing that ever happened to the Jews in America.
Right.
Don't tell me that's not significant. I don't care how you interpret things. I don't care what you do with them. Do something with them. You can't ignore things. And that's very much the way.
Take a stand for, against. It doesn't matter.
I don't care.
But take a stand. Find out where you are with regards to that.
Things are not just happening in this world. They're happening. There's a message. Do I know the right message? No, but I know a message that resonates with me. And you know a message that resonates with you, and do it. But you've got to do something with things that are happening in your life.
When do things become big enough to take a stand on them? Meaning, could you do this for every small thing? This formula fits for, every small thing, or is it only things that become a national holiday in Israel or become a bigger deal?
No, everything is significant.
Everything
is significant. Everything in your life has to be understood the way there's a message there. There's something to learn from it. And are you learning always the right thing from it? Maybe not, but you're learning from it. Knows when a Kodesh Baruch Hu, we believe very strongly that everything is a message, and that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is sending us messages all the time. So people always say, whenever I talk about that, but how do I know what the message is? On some level, it doesn't really matter. If a Kodesh Baruch Hu sees that you learned something from what's happening to you, he's happy with that. Now, he might still need to send you another message because you didn't get the right one, but you definitely got something. Sometimes when you interpret something.
Sorry. Yeah. You want a drink?
I think I'm okay. Sometimes when you interpret something, so you miss the point completely, but you nevertheless got a point. It says as long as you get a point, then you didn't wait. The event wasn't wasted on you.
Right. I'm going to take a turn on this, but just down that road, I think learning from your messages and from the things around you is one of the most important messages, one of the most important things that we could learn. And always, talking about that, we spoke about that a few weeks ago, that just the things you can learn from life, and to go down that here as well. Messages message is such an important thing to be able to take from things. And I find, this is my personal opinion on it, is that we very often we limit. We want to learn a lesson, so we limit it, right? And we make it a very specific lesson, and we can only learn that thing and nothing else. So this obviously, people do this with regards to these holidays that are coming up, now and these times in Israel. But we do this with why no one's in Kever Rachel. No one's in Kever Rachel because Hashem's punishing us for not being able to, not davening the right way. Well, I daven the right way, so it's irrelevant to me. Once you limit it. I remember that in Har Nof, when there was the Har Nof massacre and the Arabs went into a shul in Har Nof, and they killed people. And the message that people were taking was a message of tefillah and of davening and of the reason why it happened here. And it became like very quickly pretty irrelevant to people because we daven, or okay, now we're mechazik in davening, so it's over. But if the message is that something's wrong with us, something's wrong with every person who heard this thing come to their ears, there's something wrong. It may be tefillah for this person. It might be taras mishpacha for this person. It might be zrizos for mitzvahs for this person. And it might be, not doing so much and doing less. And it could be different for every single person. Then it wouldn't have dissipated or would dissipate so quickly. And it would be relevant to every person in their way. So like the formula and the lesson of learning lessons and messages and taking your messages is just so important to me. And I hear that also, to tie it back, why you're saying that it's not really the day itself that speaks to you, but it's the message. There's something happening here that I need to deal with. So I hear that.
For me, on these days, it always brought up for me my relationship with Eretz Yisroel and my feelings. For most years, my feelings of missing Eretz Yisroel. Now it brings up different things. But
when you lived in the U.S., in La Jolla and Australia, respectively, but what were the things that your like daily avoda or your yearly avoda were missing from not being here in Eretz Yisroel?
So, if you asked me that question while I was living in America, I couldn't necessarily answer that question.
Money.
But
that's the money shot right there.
But living here, I can answer that question.
So I would change the question. I would say, now that you're back and you're rerouting yourself here in Eretz Yisrael and it's becoming part of your daily routine, what are some of the things that maybe you should have missed and you should have been more, could have been more on top of when you were there?
So for me personally, yearning for the Gula is much more poignant here. And only because I can smell the Gula here better than in the deep pain of assimilated Gullus in America. I can, and not that it's not assimilated here also.
The yearning for the Geula, you feel much more here.
Much more here. And I'll tell you, and it was a great question that leads me into a place in a better way than I would have gotten there. On Chol HaMoed, I got this thing in my head. I really wanted to see Birchas Kainim. I've seen it before. I've been a part of it before. They do this thing here in Eretz Yisroel that on Chol HaMoed, on one day, this year they did it 2 days, because they wanted to spread the crowd because of Corona.
Spread the crowd and not Corona.
And not Corona, right. So they wanted to, so they did Birchas Kohanim. Birchas Kohanim is really the way that it always used to be, was they had a chazan on loudspeaker.
Yeah.
And it was a pretty simple affair, but nevertheless, all the Kohanim would go up to the Kaisel. And
a simple affair in its production, but not in the amount of people that would come for it.
No, because you had Americans here, you had people that were visiting Yontif. You had tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands. I mean, it was just massive crowd would come for Birchas Kohanim. The Kohanim would be, layers thick from the Kaisel. Then you could see it because of all the white talesim, because they put the house over the head and they give the bracha. and then the crowds of people receiving that bracha. This year, the setup was a little different because not everybody could get down to the Kosel. They had it blocked off. It was packed, but then it was packed again, and many Khazanem couldn't get down to the front line. So where I was up on the plaza, by that that mechitza in the back, that wall or chain or whatever it is. So there was another row of Kohanim.
Oh, interesting.
There, and they had Khazanem, and they had a choir, and it was just like, I can't describe it, so gorgeous. And during Musaf of Yontif, where we say Mipnei Chatoinu Golinu Me'atzenu, the theme of Yontif is that we're missing the temple, we're missing the Beis HaMikdash, and here we're standing, listening to the Chazar Shashatz of Musaf, in the closest we're going to get now to the Beis HaMikdash, and you're standing there, V'hareinu, and we say the Chazan says the words that our eyes should see the rebuilding of the temple and all this, and you're hearing this gorgeous sound, like the sound like you would imagine of what the Levium and what the singing in the Mikdash was like, and you get just a little bit of taste of it. And you're not just thinking and using your head to work it through to say, I want the Gula and I want the Beis HaMikdash. You're standing there at the last remnant of the Beis HaMikdash, and you're saying, V'hareinu b'vinyano, that we should see the building of the temple. V'samchenu b'sikunai, and we should rejoice with its fixing and its completion. And you're standing there, and the emotion, I'm plotzing, I'm crying, I can't stop myself. It was just so compelling that you felt, mamish, I want this Gula. I'm not just davening for a thing that I'm told, daven for the Gula. I felt that Gula. The word I always say about Rabbi Akiva, that Rabbi Akiva and his colleagues were standing on the top of the Beis HaMikdash. Standing on French Hill. They were standing up there by Mount Scopus, right? And they're looking down at the area of the temple, and they see a fox coming out of the Holy of Holies. And the colleagues all break down crying. Rabbi Akiva's laughing. So the colleague said, Rabbi Akiva, what are you laughing about? He says, what are you crying about? So they said that a place where the Torah says, Zara Karav Yumas, that if a foreigner, a stranger, a non-Kohen goes into that place, so then he should die, and you see a fox coming out of that place, we shouldn't cry? Rabbi Akiva says it's exactly the reason that I'm laughing. Because there are two prophecies. One prophecy is that Tzion Sada Techrash, that Zion is going to be plowed under like a field. But there's a second prophecy that says that Od Yeshu, in the future, the children and the elders are going to sit there and they're going to laugh and they're going to dance in the streets of Yerushalayim. Until I saw the first one come true, I had no idea the second one was going to come true. But now that I saw the first one come true, the second one I know is going to come true also. And that's why I'm laughing. And the students turn to Rabbi Akiva and they say to him, Akiva nichamtanu, Akiva nichamtanu, you've comforted us. Look, at the end of the day, Rabbi Akiva gave a good explanation, but at the end of the day, you're standing over a destroyed temple. It was destroyed. It was plowed under like a field. So how can you laugh at that? So I think that the real answer to it is that Rabbi Akiva, when his colleagues looked at it, they saw broken stones, broken buildings, destroyed place. Rabbi Akiva saw what happens when you destroy something, you then start to rebuild it. And to Rabbi Akiva, the reality was that it was rebuilding itself, that he was watching not a makom that was empty, but a makom that was now ready to be rebuilt. And he was able to see that rebuilding. That's why they turned to him and said, Akiva nichamtanu. Nechama means you've given me a new perspective. And so you've given me the perspective. Don't look at destroyed places as destroyed places. Look at them as paving the way for rebuilding and start to feel that rebuilding. So when I stand by the Kosel and I see things like that, I don't see the last remnant of the temple. I see the first steps towards the building of the Beis HaMikdash. I smell the Beis HaMikdash and feel like, wow, it's just going to be a matter of time until this whole event is going to be magnified and amazingly, and it's going to take place on that side, not on this side. I see that very much when I go to the Tayelet in Talpiot, and I see the Has Promenade, And I stand there and I look over the Makom HaMikdash, and there's that yellow yarmulke dancing in front of me. And what I see is the Beis HaMikdash there, and I see that pillar of smoke that we talk about in the Mishnah, that there was a pillar of smoke that went up to the heavens every day from the Mizbeach. I see that. I could talk about it and I could feel it in America, but when I stand here in Yerushalayim, I feel it in a very different way.
That's amazing. I have a similar process. With regards to the kosel, my Rebbe always used to say how silly we look that we go to the kosel, we turn our backs towards it, and we come and take pictures, smiling. You're smiling at the saddest grave we have. This really, in essence, the saddest place, because it's a place of richuk. It's a place of how far we are from God, because the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed there and it's not being rebuilt. And there's a perspective to that makes sense. So I always used to go for a while. I would go, and if we were to take pictures, we would take with our sort of side facing the kosel and our backs towards the entrance, or towards like Aish on that side or something like that, just to sort of let that sit in. And then I would go to the kosel, and it would be a sad experience for me. But if this is, and then the process was, if this is how close I feel, like when I'm sad, and I'm sad because this is such a holy place and we're so far, then just imagine what's going to happen when the Beis HaMikdash comes. And that was it was a similar process to the, Akiva Nichamtana, the new perspective is from realizing how sad it is here, then you can come to how much now your Tzipisal Yeshua changes, because now you really want to get rid of that, and you want to bring back the Shekhinah, and you want to bring back the divine presence to this place. So that's an interesting, a similar process. It's interesting though that you say that you can feel it more here than in America, because a lot of the talk of the people in America is we want the Gula so we can get out, we can be out of Gullus, right? Like this morning we were sitting down at a bar mitzvah, and the guy said, we were talking about in Hebrew, he was talking about how he has a grandpa and a Zaidi or something, and he said those are the remnants of Gullus. We'll be back to Israel and we'll call everyone Saba and Safta, and like that's sort of the feeling, like get out of America, get out of Chutz La'aretz, come back to Eretz Yisroel, and that's the end of that'll end the Gula, or getting out. What the Gula does, it takes us out of America. Where does it bring us? Eretz Yisroel, but it takes us out. And it's interesting that you're saying that you didn't necessarily feel that once you're here. So now it's enriching what I'm doing here and enriching Eretz Yisroel. But I didn't need necessarily the Gula Shlema to get me out of anywhere.
Right. What I felt in America always was the richuk, was the distance to God, and the.
Right. I'm sad that I'm not sad. Almost. Right?
I'm sad that I feel so distant. Right, and that I feel this iron curtain between me and God. And here, I feel that also, but I'm able to see it coming down in front of me. I'm able to feel that it's on its way down. When I remember a few things that made a big impression on me. One of them was after the Tainus. I happened to have seen it on Shavasa B'Tammuz. I was here many years ago. I wasn't even in La Jolla, but I happened to have been here for Shavasa B'Tammuz. And at the end, two amazing things happened. One was that I saw them giving out little pekalach of.
Was I with you, or was it?
I don't think so.
No.
This is before you were learning here. But little pekalach, and with a little drink and a little thing. They did it Shavuos morning also. And when I see stuff like that, it just touches me so deeply. Yidden caring for Yidden. When I was in Europe, and on the Yortzeit, the Melech of Lezhensk, and they had tents set up. They were serving. They even had a board that showed how many tens of thousands of meals they served in one night in Lezhensk. How many pounds of potatoes they brought from Eretz Yisroel. How much all this stuff that they brought, and what they served. It was unbelievable. Not a penny. You didn't have to pay a penny. There was a place you wanted to put in money, but there was no charge. It wasn't even a minimal charge, nothing. There were Yidden that said, Yidden need to come to daven here. They need to be taken care of. Let's take care of them. When I see that, I see the crumbling of the Iron Curtain. I see the Gula. I smell the Gula when I see stuff like that. So one year, Shavasa B'Tammuz, it was very emotional, and it was in my head. And as I walked away from the Kaisel, after Ma'ariv, I think it was, either after Mincha or after Ma'ariv, I turned around and I bumped into an old man. And I looked at the guy and I said, I'm so sorry. And the guy said to me, don't worry. He said, but stop worrying so much. He said this in Yiddish to me. He said, stop worrying so much. The Ghoul is on its way. And it just touched me so deeply. It's like, here's a Yid, and who knows what this guy's been through, And the guy looks at me and he says, you have to worry, but don't go so crazy. The Ghoul is on its way. You can smell it. And that really taught me how to, when I came to Eretz Yisroel, I looked for those kinds of things. Random acts of kindness, people reaching out to each other, Yidden being Yidden, and even with the secular and even with all of this stuff, but Yidden being Yidden and behaving like Yidden is really, that's when you know that the Gula is coming. I just read this thing about Shalva, this organization here, Shalva, and how it started. It's just astounding.
What is it? What's the organization?
It's with kids with disabilities. And it started from parents that had kids with disabilities and they couldn't get the services that they wanted. And it's a very dramatic story and it's much more detailed than that. But it's Jews that turned around and said, we're doing this for other Jews. And I think that's really an amazing thing. So I'll tell you another moment that I had. About 20-something years ago, we came on a 3-month sabbatical. We came right before Shavuos. And we stayed until Rosh Chodesh El Berach. And Shavuos, we went to Shavuos Yeshiva, and we stayed here we stayed in Gula, and
we stayed in like a random apartment.
Random, yeah. Were you with us?
Around the block, yeah. I remember that trip well, yeah.
Yeah. And we learned all night. You and I learned. I think you and I learned. We were learning Mishnayos.
I definitely remember the night. Yeah. I definitely remember the boys on the steps smoking. I definitely remember.
That's right. And it wasn't just camels. We went. You might have to get out. We went to the Kaisel. Rena was in a carriage. She was in a thing. We brought her. And when we walked out, we were in Gula. So we walked out of our street on Rehov Brand, right? Where Brisk was across the street. So you walked out. There was like 10, 15 people starting to walk towards the Kotel. And then when you walked onto the main street in Gula, right? So then there was now, you were walking with a group of 100, 150 people. Then as you're walking down the street, that 150 became 300 people. And then as you walked out of Mea Sharim and towards the Chaimis, so now you're there with thousands of people. And then when you walk through Shar Yafo, you're there with tens of thousands of people walking through together. And at some point, we weren't really wheeling Rena. It was more like it was floating. And then you get to the Kaisel, and it's dark. So there's lights, of course, but you can't really see what's going on. And you know that you could feel it. Like, when they're in the dark, when there are worms in front of you, like you could sort of see some like shadow of things moving. So you could see that there are people. There's a lot of people and they're minyanim everywhere. And then you start to daven and you get really, really daven, right? Because it's like, davening in a bus station.
It gets hot.
And it's just wild there. And then you hit this moment of Neitzachama when the sun rises. And every minyan, there's got to be 1,000 minyanim. Every minyan hits Shmona Esrei at exactly the same moment. And there is total silence, which itself is a nace, right? That you have, 80,000 Jews standing in a place and nobody has anything to say. Holy cow. So, but everybody's davening the exact same thing
at the exact
same moment. And all you hear is a couple of birds chirping. You feel like you're standing at the foot of Har Sinai, You feel like you're standing in the Beis HaMikdash, mamish, in the courtyard, in the azar of the Beis HaMikdash. And it is the most incredible moment. When you finish Shmona Esrei, you look out and you see how many people are there. And you say, I'm part of Klal Yisrael. It's not just me, and it's not just my couple of chaverim, my people, my community, but we are part of the Jewish people. And that's another thing that I relate to. Here, better, the only other place that I've ever experienced this was at the Siyum HaShas, was in New Jersey of all places, but in the Siyum HaShas, when you're standing with 90,000 people and you say Amen, Yehei Shmei Rabba, and you feel like you're standing by Har Sinai, and the world has just changed. But this is something that's so profound to me to feel this here that I could only imagine in America, but that I can actually experience here.
Fascinating. Yeah, I think that was the last time I was ever at the Kosel on Shavuos. Was then. Because even when I was learning here, the yeshiva I was in prioritized, learning the whole night and learning till night, so we didn't go. So that was the last time. So my memories is exactly the way you're describing, because that was the last time I was there as well. So for you, it's just to recap, it would be the feeling of Gula, feeling the Gula coming and on its way, and being part of the Klal of Klal Yisrael, being part of this bigger nation and connecting us all here. That's fascinating.
It's why, for me, secular Jews here are more painful to me than they are in America. They're doing exactly the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. There's exactly the same Chol Shabbos, exactly the same non-observance. But here, because the Kedusha is so much greater, and the living this way is so much more real, when we're choosing not to live this way, it's therefore that much more painful.
It's very funny. I always tell this, but for me, it's when we were here. So we obviously, maybe all the times we visited. So we used to go to Tante Diane and Uncle Shui, the lifts in Har Nof, and we take a shower. We would go and in their use their bathroom, and it's blue, very blue bathroom, and the smell of the water in Israel, if you're not used to it, it's like it has a little sulfur smell, and it's ingrained in me. Every time I smell water with a little bit of sulfur like that, I'm transported immediately back to that bathroom, but then back to Eretz Yisroel in general. And usually when we come right back if we ever visit America, we come back and I'm taking a shower and I smell it, I'm transported back, and then it gives me this feeling of like, yeah, this is where I am. This is where I should be, and that's it's just a scent and something else that attaches me to Israel. So,
right, it's amazing, and for me, this period of
sometimes
time,
like the shuk. Sometimes like the shuk. You walk through the shuk again, you get these smells, and you go back to the same nut guy that you were in, and it just brings back this feeling of like, I'm home. There's a certain groundedness to it.
Yeah, no, it's a real thing, and that's what this period of time does for me. It gives me the impetus to reassess and to revive my connection, and to sort of pinch myself and now recognize that I'm here. I'm not going home tomorrow. For the past couple of years, we've been in Eretz Yisroel this period of time. We went to Europe, and then we came to Eretz Yisroel. And then right after these days, I'd spend the Shabbos and then go back to America. And I'm spending a Shabbos and I'm spending another Shabbos, and I'm not going back to America. And it's, it just reminds me to be appreciative. I don't need to get into the politics. I don't need to discuss it, and won't discuss it now. It's got nothing to do with the politics of it, or nothing to do with, with taking any kind of stance. It's just got to do with within a very personal sense, looking at it, saying, Haidu LaHashem ki tov ki li olam chazdo, that ashrei, that I have this chilek, I have
this generation, in this door, in this time, that we have the opportunity to live here, and that we have the opportunity to live in nice houses and nice buildings. Right. And that's hakar satov to Rebbeinu Shalom for that.
Right. And that I have the opportunity to be a part of that. That I have the zuchus to be a part of this. And not just to watch it from afar now, which I have been doing for all these years, but to actually be here. Another good question to ask me would be, how did I keep my love for Eretz Yisrael alive all those years? So visiting was very important.
Right, I was gonna say that even when we lived there, I think you were on a Aliyah L'Regel. You came out, maybe not L'Regel, but at least once a year.
At least once a year. There were years where I had the opportunity to come many more times, short trips, but many more times. And
it's interesting when you ask that. My mother-in-law, Adel's mother as well, loves Eretz Yisrael and will do anything to be here. Is she here every year? Is she here all the time? No, but I think there's like when you ask how does she keep that love, like there's a focus, and that she also talks about it. And I know one of the things she does is she will not say anything negative about Eretz Yisrael, and she's mocked at it. So if you start complaining about the cab driver's ripping you off, she said, be careful. And in a sense, it really brings you to that place of like, you want to be there, and there's still a love for the land. And it's not just a place that is there that's fun to go for a seminary year or for a visit or for a yantif. It's a place where we're rooted, we're grounded. So that's that 1/8 that I know from our life, that people in Ghoul can keep their love alive. But yeah, how did you do it? So visiting is obviously
visiting is one, but how do you keep the
visiting has its two issues. You don't feel like you don't feel like you live in an aquarium because you visit the aquarium. If anything, you feel like, good, the fish should be in there and I'm here.
Right.
So it has its duality there, because sometimes you can visit and it's not so comfortable, it's not so good, or you visit in a certain time in the yantif and the thing that you don't feel so comfortable there. You don't feel like you're part of the culture here in Israel, and that's
so the naf community for me was that I never stayed in a hotel.
Okay.
In the beginning, only.
Oh, it's idealistic.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Right. Cheap Jew. I never stayed in a hotel. We always stayed at relatives or kids. When my kids were here, so we stayed with kids, and that you had to go shopping, you had to go to Makolet, you walked around, you felt like you davened in the shuls of the regular people, not of the tourists.
Right.
So you got a taste. Plus, we lived here for a while, so we had something to go back to. We had a taste and a smell, like you say, to go back to, things that brought us back to where we were. I'd go to the neighborhood where the yeshiva was, and I'd just be transported back. I see any of my old chaverim, and it would just be transported back to those times. When you have a relative that you separated from, or somebody passes in your life, you tend to take a picture and to put it on your desk, put it on a mantle, and to climb back to them through that picture. Looking at pictures is something very, very important to keep connections to things that you're not strongly connected to in a physical sense.
Or they're not in front of you, right?
So I, on my computer, was always connected. I always had pictures of Eretz Yisrael, but I also always was connected to the Kotel Cam. And there was one camera. It wasn't Esha Torah's, but there was one camera. Doesn't matter whose, but that was never shut off in time for Kabbalah Shabbos.
So you're not complaining.
And I'm not complaining. And there were many Shabbosos that I was able to, you couldn't hear perfectly or anything, but you could see dancing. You could see people standing around. You see people coming big day Shabbos. It was amazing. It was amazing. And that really lit me up. And that kept me very connected.
Okay. So that's some of our ideas and experiences and tastes and smells, and just to bring us back to Eretz Yisroel, and ultimately to say Hodu L'Hashem, that we have this opportunity of this place, and we can come back to what many before us were not zocha to. So if there are topics, though, I'm going to put this out there, that on the comment section in YouTube, I want you to put topics. If there are topics around the greater topic of Eretz Yisroel or Israel that you want us to discuss, obviously, we'll decide what we're going to put in, but we would love topics from you, from those who are listening to us on podcasts, or if you're listening to us on YouTube. Just put it in the comments and tell us, discuss this, because we want to do a little bit more on this and get more, and maybe into more of a discussion about what Eretz Yisroel is to us and the role it plays in our lives in terms of mitzvos and in terms of both in Jewish thought and in Jewish action in ritual. So we definitely want to get more into this, and we want to know from you what you find interesting and what you want to know about.
So I want to, for my part, want to end this by leveling a challenge. And it's a sort of a 3-tiered challenge. To our friends in America, I want to ask the question, and which will become a challenge, but I want to ask the question, what do you do to keep Eretz Yisrael alive in your life and a real part of your life? And for some, it's, write a check every year to the JNF. For others, it's, it's read books about Israel. It's learn the history of Israel, profess your love for Israel. But what do you do? And then the second part of the question is that enough? You have to decide that, not me. But is that enough to keep that love alive in your heart and to keep it alive for your children? I then take that question and I turn to my friends in Yerushalayim. And I say to my friends in Yerushalayim, what do you do in Yerushalayim to ensure that you don't take for granted the great gift that you have, the great schus that you have to live in Eretz Yisrael, and that to constantly reconnect and rejuvenate your connection to Eretz Yisrael? And then my third question is to my friends outside of Yerushalayim, whether it be Ramat Beit Shemesh or whether it be in Modi'in or whether it be up north, wherever you are that's not in Yerushalayim. What do you do to make sure that you're not just living in another country, and that you don't take it for granted the fact that you're living in Artseinu HaKadosh, you're living in our holy land, and you're living in a place where it's ground zero for Kedusha, which you can't always feel like you would necessarily in Yerushalayim. What do you do to keep that love of Eretz Yisrael, to keep that love alive? And I think that there's something important that comes out of this discussion. Not just it was cool to listen to to Ahron and the father, just to schmooze a good topic, which is really, Kananora, it's fun and it's interesting to listen to, but it's got to be a little more than that. And
we're challenging you. That's the idea. It's nice. It's easy to listen to, but we want to challenge you.
Right.
And send your answers to intentionaljew@gmail.com. We'll read them out if it's anonymously, but I think that it's an important thing to bring to the forefront here.
It's important for us to hear it.
Yeah.
And it's important for every one of us, every one of you, to actually use this opportunity to be able to chazer over, to be able to review this, and to maybe get a different perspective. We were saying before, just before we end, but we were saying before that it's important to keep reviewing it and thinking it, but it's important when we tell over our messages and what we think we're learning from things, to tell it over to somebody, because
Cool.
When you tell it over to somebody, pilpul chaverim, when you tell it over to somebody, they say, that's interesting. I think of it this way. And then you realize, wait, I was like on the shallow surface. Let me incorporate, I like their ideas. Let me think that into my ideas. And that's how we become deeper people, by listening to how other people process things. And we realize, I'm proud of myself the way I processed it, but I could push myself deeper to understand things, because listen to the way they understood it.
Very good. Tov Mode, Pass the Chulent.
Pass the Chulent.